with such strong Detroit and Michigan roots and truly men of service and such servant leaders. I personally am very honored to also have the privilege to call them colleagues, mentors, and friends, and been able to work with them in a number of contexts over the years. So with no further ado, we're going to jump into their bios. Admittedly, these are each snippets of each of those bios. I can't even read all of that because we would be here. This would be the whole hour and a half if I just did one of their bios because of the amount of work that they've done. But I often say, let other people praise you, not praise yourself. But we have a lot to praise each other about and be thankful for. So no further ado, one last comment on note as we jump into our introductions is Coleman mentioned it. I think when you come into the room, you'll be muted automatically. Please do turn your cameras off if you can, and we'll get rolling from there. All right, first we have Judge Edward Ewell. Judge Ewell graduated from the University of Michigan, then pursued a Master's of Science degree from Atlanta University, later graduating from Wayne State University Law School. He clerked for federal judge Damon J. Keith in the U.S. Court of Appeals and became an associate of law at Pepper Hamilton at the time. Of course, at this point, we know he is a judge. In August 2003, he was appointed to Wayne County Circuit Court, serving the criminal division for 11 years and 5 years as presiding judge. And for the past 6 years, he served in the civil division as a business court judge. Very active in the community, serving on boards Henry Ford Health Systems, Youth Connection, Wayne State University Alumni Association, the Law School of Wayne State, Board of Visitors as well. And also honored to say my brother in arms, brother of the Phi Beta Sigma fraternity incorporated. Judge Ewell, how you doing tonight? Thanks for being with us.
Fantastic, thank you.
Excellent. All right, next up, Judge David A. Perkins, we know was elected by the citizens of Wayne County, the Wayne County Probate Court, the bench in November 2018. And prior to that, he was appointed 36th District Court in January 2014, again elected by the people in November 2014, re-elected in 2016. He serves as a Wayne County Juvenile Court referee for 17 years, a magistrate for 30th District Court, assistant corporation counsel for Wayne County, and a judge advocate for the Michigan National Guard. I have known Judge Perkins for many years, and the number of stories I often hear that come back, even in individuals and young men that we mentored, even at my parents' old church, the amount of grace that he has shown sitting on the bench and really paying it forward from that seat is incredible. And that's why it's no surprise he's done things such as chair the Coalition of Racial Ethnic Justice of the American Bar Association, which is a huge coalition. Again, doing that from the state of Michigan. We're talking about men that are great Michigan leaders, but also have such incredible national presence. He's a lifetime member of NAACP, Kappa Alpha Psi fraternity. I make sure you got that in there for him. A member of the Detroit chapter of the Tuskegee Airmen, among other many accolades as you see in his bio. Judge Perkins, thanks for joining us. How are you doing tonight?
Great, honored to be here.
Yes, sir. All right, next up, we have Reggie Turner. And Reggie Turner, as we know, is not only a member at Clark Hill PLC, is also the president-elect of the American Bar Association and held another myriad of roles. He's a highly accomplished litigator, government affairs advocate, and strategic advisor. A member of Clark Hill's executive committee, the government policy group, and labor employment practice group. To no surprise, Reggie's named in the peer review guide as best lawyers in America and a super lawyer for a countless number of years, as well as the Michigan Chronicle Power 50, the business top lawyers, Crane's Detroit business power lawyers, and Crane's most connected. One thing we know about Reggie, he's incredibly connected. If you've ever seen Reggie work a room, it is a marvel to watch. And so I must say again, that what he's done as an experienced lobbyist, advocating effectively for corporate clients, and certainly federal, state, and local matters, but also the work that happens behind the scenes, the shaking hands, the early mornings and the late nights, something that he carries on with a significant government experience. So again, another incredibly long bio, but we're thankful to have him with us tonight. Reggie, how are you doing?
Great, it's good to be here with all of these great friends and role models. So I'm delighted to attend, be a part of it.
Absolutely. All right, last and certainly not least, the man who needs no introduction, the Dennis Archer. You know, the irony of which many of the myriad of roles these other gentlemen have served in, I often hear them point to Dennis and say, you know, Dennis joked on before he got here, do I need a tie? He said, Dennis, no, you don't need anything. You can be here in a t-shirt. We're just happy that you're here joining us tonight. He is the current chairman emeritus rather of Dickinson and Wright PLLC, which is my alma mater firm. And again, a great mentor of mine during my days at Dickinson Wright. He too was a former president of the American Bar Association, among State Bar of Michigan, Wolverine Bar Association. Any other organization you probably can think of, probably the president. So quite a myriad of accolades. And one of those, importantly, although we have two, of course, current sitting judges with us, and Judge Ewell and Judge Perkins, Dennis also was Associate Justice for the Michigan Supreme Court from 1986 to 1990. You see a list of other special achievements of things he was named in, incredible work he's done. One of the most important I like to say is, you know, the work he does in continuing mentorship. That's the stuff that doesn't make the list. The time he makes for those to, get on the phone with. And one thing about Dennis will always call you back. I mean, people marvel sometimes. They say, "Oh, he's so busy, so many things." He'll pick up the phone and give you a call, and you won't even know where the number is answering. It goes, Dennis Archer. And that moment, I know what it's done not only for myself through the years, but others to have a chance to meet and connect with him is truly incredible. So with that said, Dennis, how are you doing tonight? Appreciate you being here.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. And thanks for including me. Glad to be with such giants.
He's looking in the mirror. So with that, no further ado, we're gonna dive right into it. We're gonna spend a little bit of time, and so we got some pretty, let's say, weighty, high-level topics to talk about tonight. Coleman did a little bit of introduction about what the Men of Color Project is, and it's an ABA, American Bar Association Young Lawyers Division initiative. But as we know, it's not just unique to the American Bar Association. The issues are not just national, and for many attending tonight, we know you have Detroit and local and Michigan roots. It's really important that we get a perspective from gentlemen who have such prominence here, but also an understanding of the impact of these things at a national level. So, with that, we have a number of questions we're going to go over. I will note that this is an interactive session. We are going to carve out some time toward the end for Q&A. I believe Coleman give us a thumbs up. He wants people just to send you a chat, is my understanding. You can send him a chat. He will compile those questions, and we'll be able to get to those toward the latter part of the program. So, jump right into it. Every one of you gentlemen, you're heavily involved in our legal guild outside of your respective practice. So where should a young lawyer, because this is the State Bar Michigan Young Lawyer section putting the program on, that's our audience. Where should a young lawyer, particularly a lawyer of color, start in order to inspire change outside of the daily practice? Judge Jewell, we'll start with you on this one.
That's me. Before I go into it, I will say this to know, Justice Archer, Mayor Archer was very nice. He talked about the Giants, and I'm sure I'm not misspeaking when I say to Reggie or we wouldn't be where we are if not for the work of Dennis Archer. He was doing this years and years, and now Reggie knows as well, years ago, helping people before he even rose to the prominence that he is now. And, it's just a testament that he's here tonight, but that's what we should aspire to. We won't be able to help as many people as he does, but to me, one of the things that drives me is that people like Dennis Archer gave me advice. And when I've asked for him to talk to, he makes time, as was said, for everyone. So to me, young lawyers, it's not all about you. So when you talk about where should we start, we should start with where can I give the most? Don't look at it for what am I going to get out of it. That will take care of itself. But how many people can I influence or change? So I would say start where you're comfortable. Start at your church. Start if you were in an organization at your law school, start there if it has a chapter outside. Start with the Wolverine Bar, certainly the American Bar Association. There are numerous bar associations, but get in, and they usually have a young lawyer section. So get there. Don't go in and try to change everything because you're brand new, but listen and learn. And then when there's so many opportunities to give, and I don't want to dominate the time, you will find your niche if you're willing to work. And again, don't do it for what you're going to give out of it. Do it for what you can put into it. Another good place is I've spoken at over 1,000 high schools or elementary and junior. I mean, they're always looking for people for career days. There's never enough. And when I was growing up, I never had met a Black lawyer until I got to college, because I grew up and not the means that I am now. So there's still, you'd be amazed, there's still a lot of young people who've never they've seen the drug man or, and everybody else, but they have never seen a lawyer other than TV. I'll stop there.
Well received, Judge Jewell, and such an important point. I think it makes an immediate dovetail to Dennis when we come to you right on this one, because one point Judge Jewell makes very clear is the importance of that pipeline, right? I mean, you mentioned gentlemen that say they're in their positions today because of someone else they only had a chance to look up to, but possibly meet and be a direct proponent of those efforts. So Dennis, if you would talk to us a little bit about what a young lawyer can do to get involved outside their practice or daily practice, recommendations you'd make. And of course, I want to make this comment. I'd be remiss because I already have been. I introduced Kappa Alpha Psi, Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated. I must introduce the other brothers of Alpha Phi Alpha Incorporated, and Dennis and Reggie. So I'll let them take it away from here.
That was a great afterthought.
Well, you know, y'all are normally the first thought. So I thought, I switch it up on you a little bit this time. I got to keep you on your toes.
Well, I would tell you, one of the things that I have always found to be helpful to me is to try to give back to the community in which I live and to be a part of the community. And once you're part of your own community, you find a way to be of help. There's always something going on where you have some knowledge about how to make it work quicker, easier, etc. And when you give back, there's nothing like a thank you that comes from someone who appreciates the fact that you gave up of your time and energy to accomplish something. And that, frankly, has been what I've found to be invaluable in terms of increasing what I can do to reach out and to make a difference, because I can pick up the phone and call someone that I've met. I let my legal work, as I was starting to practice law, speak for itself. I was determined to always be prepared. I was determined to do the very best that I could and let my activity or my law practice speak for itself. But when I spoke, I wanted my involvement to be viewed as being part of the community. I mean, I got involved in politics to help Robert Millender help Richard Austin to become mayor of the city of Detroit. This is back in 1969. I'd go to the various meetings and would participate along with the senior citizens and others who care about who gets elected. They was out passing out literature door to door before elections. They would be at the polls, for example, passing out flyers to remind people before they go in to vote what they can do. And then one of the other things that I found was pro bono work. We call it pro bono today. I just call it being part of the community. And if somebody was unable to pay for my legal fees for me to do something that they needed, if I was competent and could do what they needed, I'd do it free. And again, there's nothing like having somebody look you in the face, win or lose, no matter how it turns out, it's because you cared enough to think about them. It's called giving back.
Right.
If you give back, it's like casting your bread on the water, it will come back to you. And you give back without, as was pointed out by the judge, not looking for something in return. You give back because you've got the ability to give back, and you can do for them that they cannot do for themselves. Because all of us that are on this program this evening stand on the shoulders of others who've caused doors to be open for us to walk through. And so therefore, I will, as I've said to many people, I am ambitious and I try to work hard to earn leadership, etc. But I use my left hand to reach out to see if I can accomplish what I wanted to do. But I use my right hand, which is the strongest, to reach behind me, to reach back and pull somebody in and sling them in front of me so they can go past what I've been doing. Give back to your community. And then everything just starts falling into place. What you do, how you do it, people want you to do things, and then people are going to want you to do things. Why don't you run? Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? Because they care about you, and they will do whatever it is that they can do to be of help to get you where you want to go.
Yeah, I think you so eloquently said that. A great takeaway in that it's starting local, starting in your backyard. Both of you made that comment that you don't have to look so far about where I can make an impact and a change. It's something right in your nose. I love even the pro bono concept, because pro bono was one of the first ways, not only did I get exposed to legal disciplines that weren't in the normal billable matters in front of me, it allowed me to also service others at the exact same time. Some of the most fulfilling things I can think of in my private practice days, we're doing pro bono matters and that type of work. Judge Perkins, I'm going to go to you on this. Would you sort of agree with this approach of the reaping what you sow, lifting as you climb? And what advice would you give to young lawyers in order to inspire change, for one, inspire change outside of their practice?
One, like we said earlier, I stand on Dennis's shoulders. I've benefited from Reggie's help, from Ed's help, and those other attorneys that the Ken Lewis's, the Larry Patricks that came before me. And it's because of those folks that I'm able to do what I'm doing now. And you have to give back. There's no alternative. As you go through this journey, you have a responsibility, at least in my mind, to give back and help other people. And that can come in terms of a conversation. It can come in terms of mentoring. And as was said earlier, it can be right next door to you. It can be somebody sitting in the office next to you. It can be somebody sitting in the pew next to you at church, or it can be the young person who you've helped or opened a door for somehow, and they will later appreciate it. If we do not give back, why are we doing any of this? And don't get me wrong, all of us want to be successful. All of us want to live comfortably, but I believe, particularly as men of color, we have a responsibility to give back. And one of the things that I would suggest is to be a little introspective and ask yourself, what is your passion? If you have a passion about something, then it's so easy to get involved. And the other thing is, or the other two things are, don't be afraid. At worst that happens is you fall down. If you do it right, and we can laugh about that, but if you do it right, there'll be somebody there to help pick you up. And we have to remember that all of us go forward, we have to turn back, like the justice, the mayor, the guru, Dennis Archer said, you have to reach back. So those are a few of the things that I would say.
Yeah, reaching back is absolutely critical. And Judge Perkins, I really appreciate that you made the comment about as men of color, right? That's who we all are here. And it's not to say that other groups don't matter. We talked about the inspiration for this program, but we know representation matters. And especially in spaces where there may not have been historical representation. Reggie, kicking it to you, you're stepping into an incredibly prominent role. We talk about giving in your backyard, which you've done for years and years and years, and also done at regional and national scales. And now you're stepping in one of the most prominent national roles as the president-elect of the American Bar Association. How do you carry that forward? And again, it's what similar or maybe different nuggets would you offer to those looking to get involved? Because everyone sees you, it's a very prominent position, right? But there's a path to that. Whether or not someone else wants to end up there, what can they be doing today, particularly that young lawyer, even that young lawyer of color?
They say that service is the price you pay for the air you breathe, and I strongly believe that. And I've seen so many leaders in our community who have lifted others as they have climbed the ladder of success in civic activities and corporate activities and bar association activities. And it really is remarkable to see how much progress has been made over the course of my lifetime with respect to opportunities for people of color in the legal profession and in various other pursuits that were foreclosed to men and women of color for many, many years in this nation's history. We all have an obligation to continue to break down barriers that continue to exist. When I was a first-year law student at the University of Michigan Law School, then State Bar President Dennis Archer came to visit the law school and spoke to students there. And I had the privilege of listening to his speech. And afterward, I went up to him because I knew of him. Didn't know him, but knew of him because my father was very impressed with Dennis Archer and the work that he had done to help Coleman Young get elected mayor of the city of Detroit. His legal career had been stellar at that time. And so at that time, President Archer accepted my request to take some time with him and chat. He was very generous with his time and his advice, and it spurred me to think about more work in the Bar Association. I joined the Law Student Division of the ABA at that time, and attended my first ABA meeting while I was in the Law School Student Senate at Michigan Law School, and had more opportunities to spend time with Dennis Archer. And then about a year after I first met him, he was appointed by Governor Blanchard to the Michigan Supreme Court. And he had to run for retention of that seat in the next election, as all of you judges know about that process. All right. And so I volunteered for his campaign, and we bonded even more at that time. And one day I got a call from him during my final year of law school, and he suggested that I might want to become a law clerk in his office at the Michigan Supreme Court. And that really created an opportunity for me to benefit from his wisdom, his dedication to the best in our profession. And those 2 years were transformative for me. And I continue, needless to say, to try to emulate the character, temperament, and service that he has shown throughout the course of his professional career. It's a hard act to follow, I must admit, but I'm still working at it, and I think that he has always given credit to his mentors as well, and he's connected me with many additional mentors over the course of time through the American Bar Association, through the National Bar Association. You know, I've had the privilege of meeting with Fred Gray and getting to know him through the National Bar Association. He was Rosa Parks' lawyer during the Montgomery bus boycott, and seeing giants like that really give you an understanding of why we are in this profession and why we must, as lawyers, break down barriers that exist, again, for people of color.
So speaking of barriers, it's an excellent segue, Reggie. I mean, the one takeaway I think we got from all that is simply put, shoot for the moon, which is Dennis, then we land amongst the stars, right? So if we set the bar so high, if we shoot for that, we'll at least land amongst the stars. And that, and you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, as the great philosopher once said. So you mentioned an important point, Reggie, and I want us to dive into that, and that is about maintaining, I think, authenticity. More than ever in 2020, in particular, there's a drive to, quote, be oneself. But as another great philosopher, Dave Chappelle, once said, keeping it real can go wrong. So there's a balance. And to that point, what insights would you all give? Dennis, we'll start with you, and we'll continue in the same order as we did the previous question, wrapping back around with you, Judge Jewell. As a young lawyer, what advice you would give that young lawyer, particularly young lawyers of color, who may be the minority? How important is it to keep and maintain one's identity? And how do you do that?
I don't think you can avoid your identity. All you have to do is look in the mirror.
Right.
And so I tell you what I have found to be most interesting and yet challenging. I've learned over the years how hard it has been for our outstanding lawyers, judges, and people with a law degree who do so many other kinds of things with it, how they all have had some form of racial discrimination and adversity put up in front of them, either because of their color, being black or brown, or being a female, whatever the case may be. And it's not been easy. And you don't want to be Richard Pryor, although I will tell you, if you give me some vodka and club soda in the right setting. But in any event, the point is that one of the things that I learned going to the national bar meetings is that at our convention hotels, you had these giants, Thurgood Marshall as a lawyer, and Constant Baker Motley, and from Michigan, George Crockett, uh, who has been a real giant, Judge Damon Keith, Judge Anna Diggs Taylor, and so many others. And to listen to what they did when they went down south to help those who wanted to register so that they could vote, who wanted an equal opportunity. And Fred Gray was mentioned by Reggie, who was a young lawyer and represented Rosa Parks when she was arrested for refusing to get out of her seat when a white man came up to her seat. And that meant, because she was the Black person sitting in that seat, that she had to get up and go to the back of the bus. She was tired and didn't do it. So she got arrested. I mean, those kinds of things. And you listen to the lawyers at the National Bar Meeting whose homes have been bombed. You listen to Thurgood Marshall talk about how people would pick him up when he came into their city. If he flew in or took a bus in or took a train in, and how they were so concerned about him and his national reputation for greatness and being able to deliver. They had him lay in the back seat of their cars to take them to their homes. And they would make sure he would not sleep in a bedroom that's got a window by it, because they were afraid that somebody might try to toss a bomb. You listen to those stories and you cringe, and you understand what they went through and why they are so dedicated to do what they did as practicing lawyers. And it energizes each of us. We all do I bet you every one of us got a story. I could tell you about Helen Moore and a couple of her buddies who were trying to, back when the school system was changing over from having a predominantly overwhelming white members of the board. School system had high quality, great education, etc. But they didn't want to provide, or they would not provide, or it did not provide an equal opportunity for good education. And Helen Moore and others said they would get up at the meetings and raise some sand. And they were told at one point, you come back here and raise some sand again, we're going to arrest you. They gave me a call. They gave me a call because they knew me through politics. They knew me through the congressional districts. And they knew that they could talk to me and get perhaps some advice. I not only gave them some advice, I went to the meeting to make sure that if they spoke and when they spoke, and they knew, folks knew who I was, that I was a lawyer and I was there to represent them, they did not get arrested and the like. You got to stand up. It's not the kind of thing where you got people there going to give you press coverage, etc. You're there because you care. You're there because these are the things that Claudia Markham and others, when they went south to try to help people to get registered to vote, they weren't down there to get their pictures of it. They were down there to help people because it made a difference. And it has made a difference. And when you give back like that, it is more rewarding than to win a big money judgment or to win a no cause if you're representing a client that's being accused of doing something in a civil nature. And there's wins that are valuable, and giving back, that's one.
Yeah, and what you said, Dennis, is so important. Think about the authenticity you bring in yourself. You keep your identity. You carry that into these other matters, which sometimes this is a civil matter involving money, fighting over money, right? Or business is fighting business. Is not necessarily life or limb, as others may have thought, but you carry that into it. Just Perkins, I want to jump to you as a man of color in particular. The importance of maintaining your identity, maintaining authenticity, the challenge. How do you do it?
Well, as Dennis said, you look in the mirror and you have to understand that, but for the grace of God, you could be in another situation. And you have to understand that no matter how far we've come, we still have so much further to go. And we have a responsibility to never forget that. You know, we talked earlier about standing on the shoulders of those that came before us, but on any given day, you know, for any number of reasons, I could be George Floyd. You know, I could be that person who gets stopped. Titles don't mean a thing. And until the least of us has fair access and some sense of success and is seen as being meaningful by the majority, we all have to continue to fight. As you know, Dennis mentioned Thurgood. You know, think of and the other giants that came before. Think of all that what they've gone through. So to keep my identity, you know, it's easy for me. I never will forget that I'm a Black man in America who at any given day may be called something other than a Black man. And I have a responsibility to help as many behind me and beside me as I can. And because ultimately, your success, if I can help you, is my success.
And sometimes we get, let's call it unkind reminders, right, of our Blackness. We get to look in the mirror every single day and remember that, remember our difference, our uniqueness that we bring to the table. But sometimes we get reminded about that because we are not our bar card. We are not our commas and our periods and our distinctions after our names, or maybe those in front of our names, particularly to the average individual. If you are seen in, in circumstance we think about for traffic stop or just along the street in quote unquote plain clothes. So we get the reminder of it. And sometimes that's why it's a challenge, I think, to come out with that authenticity, to live what identity is. The Dennis's point with the vodka club soda, because y'all thought this was water. I'm joking, it's water. But to that men of color after late night. But there's,
can I interrupt for one moment?
Yeah,
I want to give you two examples of what I think both you and Judge Perkins alluded to. Judge Damon Keith, who was a friend, a mentor, and an outstanding federal judge, was appointed by the Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court and asked Judge Keith, who was a federal judge himself at the time, would he please take responsibility for talking about the celebration, I think at the time was the 200th anniversary of the signing of the Constitution or whatever it was. And Judge Keith took that on, went all around the United States and met with the judiciary and different venues and the like. And so they were all coming together to celebrate down in Virginia. What's that, Reggie, down Williamsburg? Is that?
Yeah, yes.
They were down there to celebrate, and he was out talking to several of his colleagues, and somebody came up and got out of the car and gave Judge Keith his car keys to go park his car keys. And when I was on the Michigan Supreme Court, I had the privilege of working with someone who I'd supported to himself to become a justice on the Michigan Supreme Court, and that was our former governor, G. Minnie Williams. And I had a chance to work with him in his last year on the court, my first year on the court, and he was our Chief Justice. He is an enormous person who was always helpful, and he was telling me how to campaign and what to do and some touches that people fail to do when you're a candidate. And he was just a good friend of our family, my wife and our kids. And not long after he was off to court, he died. And I went to the funeral, and then a lot of people were invited back to their home in Grosse Pointe. And I got out, and when I was there, it was snowing. And people were coming in, and what I observed was that there was snow piling up and people were getting out of cars, ladies, etc. And I told Trudy to go on in. I saw a shovel and I just started moving the snow around so people could pull the cars up, etc. and the like. And so when you know, somebody pulled up and gave me their keys. I said, I'm sorry, but I'm not here for the service. And did not get indignant, did not, because there wasn't too many of us out there of color. But the point is, and it's not because he didn't know people of color. He was our ambassador to Africa, and he was well known for being very fair, etc. But the point is, you can be disrespected very easily, and if you've got thin skin, you can. Sometimes people say things that they don't feel bad about because they feel indignant because somebody fronted them. But you've got to get over or get by that because you know who you are, and just say, as Judge Keith did, gave the guy his keys back, and I gave the gentleman his keys back. I thought about Damon when that occurred, and didn't say anything about it. But that's the kind of thing that can occur, and it's important that we deal with it on a class level and not be reduced or reduce yourself to the manner in which you've been treated. It just puts you a cut above because people watch that, they see it, and it just goes all around. It just goes all around.
Absolutely.
And it's important how you handle yourself.
I strongly agree with Mayor Justice President Archer on that point. We stand on the shoulders of giants like Thurgood Marshall, and Fred Gray, and others that Mayor Archer, President Archer has talked about. And it's up to us to continue the quest for justice in the right way, and to mentor those who are coming behind us. There will continue to be challenges. We saw in 2020 serious challenges to the health and welfare of people of color in a variety of ways, and we have seen that before. When I was president of the National Bar Association, we had planned, and during the course of my year, to do a lot of sort of internal work to strengthen the programs of the bar, the finances of the bar, the office staff, and so forth. But a couple of weeks after I was sworn in, the hurricanes hit the Gulf Coast region, hurricanes Katrina and Wilma, and wiped out homes of many people in the southern part of the United States. And we knew that the Bush administration wanted to help, but it appeared, at least at the outset, that they really didn't know how to address this problem, and people of color were dying, not just from having been affected by the flood, but the aftermath of the flood, the heat, the lack of housing, the lack of appropriate medical care. And as a result, I contacted Dennis Archer and said, we got to do something about this. And he said, well, I'm going to connect you with Harriet Miers, who is President George W. Bush's chief counsel. She's, I know her from the ABA, and I will connect you with her. And he knew that I had run a couple of task forces for President Clinton when I was serving in the Department of Housing and Urban Development. And so I went and offered my services to the Bush administration in order to help Michael Brown get his act together. Because although President Bush had said on television that he was doing a heck of a job, things were really falling apart, as you recall.
Nice job, Brony.
Yeah, well, but we made a difference in that setting. I brought together all the skills that I had and some of the people that I'd worked with in the Clinton administration to help us with that task force, the National Bar Association Hurricane Relief Task Force, and we made a real difference. We brought issues to light. We raised money. We got the attention of the governors of the affected states, senators, U.S. senators, U.S. Representatives, and we made a big difference. And you know, to the young lawyers and aspiring lawyers who are on this call today, I think that it's very important to remember this part of the lawyer's oath. I shall never reject from any consideration personal to myself the cause of the defenseless or oppressed, or delay anyone's cause for lucre or malice. That is an essential part, especially for lawyers of color, especially for lawyers of color. We have to continue the work of the trailblazers who've made it possible for us to do what we're doing today.
Yeah, Reggie, an important point you made, and you mentioned the pandemic in 2020. We have not forgotten about that. That's actually our next question. So Judge Jewell, you get the honor to answer this one, and you'd be next in line for that one to sort of dive in and share your thoughts there. But recapping this question, Reggie, I think it's an important point that as a lawyer and that lawyer's oath to not always remember considerations specific to yourself, right? That's part of identity, right? It's the things that are part of me, part of my makeup, part of my external community immediately around me, as Dennis made so clear earlier. It's not about looking where can I go serve, look in your backyard. So Judge Jewell, the first question, and I'll give you the second one and you can recap it for you after, again, is just this concept of identity, maintaining your identity, the challenges with it, and the importance to do so. But dovetailing for that, 2020 made the world a lot tougher and illuminated a lot of things with this pandemic. So maybe speaking about how that further impacted and affected, your courtroom and what you had to do in order to adjust. So first the identity piece, and then feel free to take us into that next question about the impact of the pandemic in 2020 on your practice in the court.
In terms of identity, that's, I think Justice Archer, you can't run away from yourself and who you are. I just go back to when I clerked with Judge Keith, same stories that Dennis and Reggie mentioned. I mean, the judge would always say that there's not a day that would go by that he's not reminded that he's a Black man, as powerful as he was. And if we look, we see athletes, celebrities, politicians, it doesn't matter what, to a lot of law enforcement, we're just another Black man. And but something that Dennis said, I think is very, very important. When these situations arise, there's a number of ways you can handle it. But to me, handling it with class makes the most impression. I mean, the way Dennis Archer, the way Judge Keith, and it can go, and it's something that we not only have to get for ourselves, but we need to teach our young people that when you are encountering craziness, when you're encountering the officers who are, they have a license to kill, basically, and it is apparently have been getting away with it for a long time. Nothing that's new to our communities. I mean, that's the part that's amazing, because I've had so many white friends come to me and say, wow, I can't believe this. I'm going like, well, it's been happening for a long time. It's just that since it hasn't caught on video, you don't really see it. But you know, Hank Aaron, Jackie Robinson, Rosa Parks, class people. They didn't get up and jump in, and people were inspired by that and saw that. Not just Black people, white people, but you look at even yesterday, I think the rapper's name, and I don't want to mess it up, was Trey Songz. He got into an altercation at the Chiefs game, and he's in jail. All on how you handle it. And to me, I mean, I know we, as Black men, men of color, you know, we don't get the respect that's due. And I'm hoping that my son will get it. There was a time when I thought, when Barack Obama was in office, I said, well, it looks like things are, and then we saw what happened the last 4 years. We go like, wow, it's much worse than, and I'm leaping into your next question, room. It caused me to really, it brought tears to my eyes seeing these things that happen. When I think about my son, when he goes out, and the speech that, you know, a lot of Black men and women when single parents have to have with our sons, it's a scary thing. Right now, we have kind of lived our lives, but the future generation needs men of color to help educate how we should deal with, you know, the arming or the police presence in our communities. It's more, I think it's very, very important. And I know Justice Archer had a lot of programs when he was the mayor, and I think the current mayor is trying to do the same thing here, where there's community involvement, and because it should not be us against them, it should be a collaboration, and certainly we should be represented. And I think that's when we're represented in leadership, I think it makes a huge difference. But this pandemic has caused, to me, I think it's a time like no other for lawyers of color to, you know, there's so many places where we can educate, we can take a leadership role, we can help collaborate, and we can do things that hopefully will ease the tensions in our community, the distrust that's in our community. I mean, a lot of times they may even distrust us. So we have a big job to do at this time, and I'll just leave it at that and let you take it on from there.
No, that's perfect, Judge. And if you all bear with me, I'm actually going to we have sort of a couple different areas we pass when we go here. One is about the pandemic in general. One is about, frankly, the concept of police brutality. Because as we were exposed to a pandemic in 2020, there was the illumination of an ongoing epidemic that has been around for much longer than that. So, and that, of course, being systemic racism. So let's isolate that, because Judge, I like where you went with that. And Dennis, you're up next on this one. That knowing police brutality is such an elevated topic right now. Again, not new. As Will Smith, I think, said, you know, racism isn't new. It's not getting worse, it's just being recorded. Right. You have the ability for people to see it. These stories that we normally pass down to each other, right? Now you don't have to have it passed down. Somebody can just show you on their phone, this is exactly what happened. Here's the actual transcript of the interaction. There's not my version of that. This is precisely what went down. So we want to talk about the role you all think young lawyers may be able to play in educating the public on these police interactions and how to respond to those perceived injustices. Because an important point that you made, Judge Jewell, and all of us nodded here, and that is some of the first thing to do is just survive the stops, get home alive. I have a father who's an ex-law enforcement. That was number one thing. We'll deal with it after. Get home, right? Just get home. And the thing is, we're reminded of that same Blackness when we don't show up dressed a certain way or fitting a certain mold that's been ascribed to, you know, quote unquote, good Black man or, you know, safe person, right? You know what I mean? We can trust him. You know, I like to share the anecdote often that I was at an expungement fair in a clinic that I've been fortunate to do a lot of these. One of my closest friends expungements. I'm working in the room helping people who've never done it before, other lawyers. Here's the stuff you got to do. The boxed lunches come in for the lawyers. I go grab a lunch for myself and a colleague, and it's excuse me, my brother, those lunches are for the attorneys. Because it's Saturday and I'm dressed down, right? And I look around and people that know I'm a lawyer are saying, how's he going to respond? So you mentioned about those moments, what do you do with those responses? I simply just said, I know my brother, because the other gentleman was a Black man. And I watched the wheel spin in his head, and he sort of said, lawyers can look like that too. We can do that too. So there's those silent moments of education where I could have snapped and responded, what you mean? I don't look like it. You know what I mean? I could have taken that so many different directions. I think that's such an important point you all mentioned about how you handle those moments, which is a challenge. Sometimes there's a part of it is to feel like maybe I should have been louder about it. Maybe I should have been more bombastic or driven the point home. But there's ways we can actually educate, you know, along the way. So with that diatribe aside, Dennis, I'm gonna kick it to you about police brutality and this elevated topic. You know, what advice you have for young lawyers and trying to educate the public, because at the end of the day is, as lawyers, our practice disciplines aside, everyone assumes that all lawyers know the law, especially our families and friends growing up. They think we know everything about all the law. So they're going to come to us oftentimes and look to us about these interactions and what advice and insights we might want to give, whether or not we actually are a criminal defense lawyer. So I'll leave with that, Dennis. Take us away.
Last year, I was privileged to receive a certificate from the State Bar of Michigan, acknowledging that I have been a lawyer for 50 years in the state of Michigan. And I think back, listening to you talk about what has occurred in your lives, and I listen to all of us as we speak. As young lawyers, I was, the American Bar Association would have each of our affiliate young lawyers. We would go into our high schools and talk about the United States Constitution, our Bill of Rights, and the like, to share with our students what their responsibility is and what the rule of law is, how you must respect the rule of law. And I think back, as you pointed out, how this is not new in terms of what happened to Mr. Floyd and others. It just sort of happened to come at the same time. We found ourselves with a pandemic that was not being managed nationally. And as a result, a lot of people wound up catching the virus. And as we learn more about it through the medical profession, we learn that Black people and brown people, because of our health issues that we may have personally, are more susceptible to catching the virus. And if we catch it, we are 3-4 more times likely to die than our white counterpart. And that was there. And then you have that discussion. And as I think all of you know, that if you have health insurance, if something's wrong, you go see the doctor. The doctor tells you what you must do to avoid having a problem or to correct the problem, etc. If you don't have health insurance, or if you don't have money to pay for the medicine, and if you get laid off in this pandemic and you don't have money to buy food and you're supposed to be taking medicine, how often have we all read, it's been reported in newspapers, television, radio, how people will take their medicine and cut it in half or take it every other day as opposed to every day? Well, you think about that, and that occurs to us because how we have been denied a good education. We've been denied a good opportunity at work and for advancement, etc. Then you get, on the other hand, as you correctly pointed out, you might see pictures of people, it's in the newspaper, generally in the South, where somebody had been lynched, or somebody was, whatever the case may be. And then you get people who have a different sexual orientation. If you remember somebody being drugged down a highway, somebody being tied to a fence post in the west state of the United States. And then you see what happens when somebody puts in uniform, police uniform, you have their neck, their knee on the neck of George Floyd for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. That's a long time. And you hear him call out for his mother. You hear him say, "I can't breathe." And you then watch how he goes limp. And we saw that take place. All of that, coupled with just what happened in our nation's capital on January 6th, where we even see, as it comes out on television, evidence that some of the participants were fire people among the fire department or police departments, or even people in the military who go there, and you see them participate in all of that. and you wonder, what is just going, why is this happening to us? And then you have a sense of anger starting to boil up. But the interesting thing is that was pointed out by the commentators, especially on MSNBC, CNN, etc., was if that had been a group of people peacefully marching for Black Lives Matter, protesting how people have been treated, and if they had walked up, not swung at or trying to fight somebody, just walked up, it would have had a bloodbath out there. That has changed, and you start to see corporate America who can make all kinds of changes that will open up doors and equal opportunity for all of us, and especially for our young lawyers, et cetera, and young people. They saw what occurred. They saw what their money was doing, supporting these candidates who were providing tax breaks and other kinds of things. And all of a sudden you start reading where they said, no more. We're not giving our money for anything like that again. You're going to have to start. And these corporations in the city of Detroit, for example, 9 CEOs came together. How? A Black minister by the name of Reverend Wendell Anthony, president of the national of the NAACP Detroit chapter, talked to Mayor Mike Duggan, who happens to be white, and says, look, we need to bring these corporations together. Can you call these CEOs? They came together, 9 of them, and they all talked about what they would do to make a difference in diversity, inclusion, equality, etc., in their own firms, and what they were willing to do to open up doors for more people to come. We've got things like the $1 Billion Roundtable. And for those of you lawyers who do not know what the $1 Billion Roundtable, look it up. Things are changing for the better, but we've got to get ready. We need you to get the best grades that you can. We need you to be involved. And I am not for defunding the police department. I believe in community policing. I believe in giving them tools and things that they need to be able to service us. You see what occurs in other states sometimes, and there's one recently where a police officer comes to a home that another police officer had been just the night before. And because he understood there was some mental health issues there, called in someone who was able to make a difference. That's the kind of thing that we need to be aware of. And let me stop because I'm talking too much.
No, appreciate that sentiment, because the converse part of that, just Perkins, want to kick it to you, is that there was also sadly that viral video that came out about a week or two ago of a similar call made to police. They actually were calling for support because the gentleman was having a mental health outbreak, and he was shot and killed, right? And he was a pastor as well. His family called saying, we're calling for help for our dad, and so that community policing aspect goes a long way. But I think what 2020 showed us, that's not how policing has been done. We think about all the historical reasons for policing, all of that, and that all of us who sit in these roles and have these titles in the days of lawyers, but still Black men, and those in our communities who don't have maybe that access to information or knowledge are going to look to us. Judge Perkins, what are insights you share with them, particularly for those that look like you, that are following your footsteps as young lawyers? What can they do, to help further educate the public to drive these causes forward? Because 2020, as Dennis noted, shown us a lot, so we're starting to see change, but we're still dealing with these issues in the current.
Right. I think that it's critically important to be involved with your community groups, your local bar associations, particularly the minority bar associations, and not be afraid to be involved with the state bar, the ABA. But I think as lawyers, we stand in a unique place because, we are supposed to be, the lights, the pillars of justice. And you can do things, you can use your church. And also you can leverage the relationships you have, because as you alluded to earlier, people will come and ask you questions and think that because you're a lawyer, you cover all areas of the law, but you have the relationships. You may not be the criminal lawyer, but you know somebody who is, and you can bring them. You can do the mentoring. You can do, like, for example, fellowship and Fellowship Chapel and my church, Sacred Heart, is also Dennis's church. They have the male mentoring program. So where we sit around and talk to the young people about choices, about what to when you're stopped by the police. And it doesn't take much to put on a small program or be a speaker at a block club meeting. Okay. And do not be afraid to get involved and engage, because if you remember, because somebody took the time to engage either with you or for you, you were able to achieve success. And you'd be surprised that as a young lawyer, you know, where these different relationships will go. And as Dennis talked about, you know, change appears to be a coming. And when you get these corporations that are saying, oh, wow, we have to change how we do business. You start following the money, changes occur. And the other things that I would say is, you know, again, look to the church, to your local church that you're involved with. Whether you go to church or not, everybody knows somebody that is in a church, and everybody has connections. And as the young lawyers, you have an opportunity to reach out, because you won't be young lawyers forever. And right.
You know, it's a concept, Reggie. We're gonna come to you on this one, on the concept of police brutality, and would love to also hear, you know, your viewpoint, stepping into the role that you are in a prominent role, because a lot of people look to the ABA. A lot of people look to what the ABA was going to say or not say, and here you are, a Black man stepping in this seat. You know, 2020, I feel like 2020 is not even over yet. Everyone says this is 2021, it's 2020's big brother. It's just like got some residual effect. They're just wearing off. It's going to be an era when they hopefully write the history books. It'll just be called the pandemic era, right? And it won't be just one year. But you know, when you step in this position, you know, one thing we found is that some of these things have been illuminated. You know, in times of crisis, character is revealed, right? It's not built. So we find out some of the character of our nation, character of leadership, character of the companies. When I didn't mention, they say, wait a minute, that's the truth happening. We saw what happened at the Capitol recently. And for some, we might say it shouldn't take all that, but it has. And so now we're in this, let's call it this period of illumination, this period of enlightenment. And police brutality is still going to be an issue at the forefront. What are your thoughts on that as you look to inspire young lawyers to get involved and make change, particularly from your platform, Rich?
Well, yeah, I saw a cartoon that was sent to me by a text a couple days ago, and it was a spoof on the movie Back to the Future, and it had the young man and the older man sitting in the car. And as you'll recall, the older man was this mad scientist who allowed them to travel across the future to the past and so forth. And the caption underneath the photo has him saying to the young man, "Look, no matter what you do, never turn this thing back to 2020."
Right.
That's the kind of way we feel about that. You know, as you enumerated, pretty much everything that could go wrong in 2020 appeared to go wrong, and we definitely have to recover from that, and I think that lawyers absolutely have a role to play in this, because you know the struggle continues, as Nelson Mandela would say, a luta continua. We will always be called upon as lawyers of color and as lawyers generally to address inequities in society, to right wrongs, and to create fealty among our leaders to the constitutional principles that they pledge to upheld when they take their oaths of office. And the American Bar Association has always had a role in that, and particularly since Dennis Archer created the first diversity entity within the American Bar Association. It was called the Commission on Opportunities for Minorities in the Legal Profession back in the 1980s. And I watched him create that, and that program has blossomed into what we now call the Diversity Center in the American Bar Association, with 6 different entities address all kinds of diversity issues and civil rights and social justice issues. So this is what I would encourage young lawyers to think about, jumping in feet first to organizations that are addressing the needs of our society, because this battle is far from over. We had a nation that was born in a revolution. We had a civil war in the 1860s, in part as a fight over slavery. We've had race riots in the 20s of the 1920s, the 1940s, the 1960s, the 1980s, arising from police mistreatment of people of color. The battle is not won, but it must be joined by those who care about those constitutional principles. Mm-hmm. And today, the American Bar Association has created a consortium of law schools, and we now have over 50 law schools that are pledged to work in this consortium to address police practices across the nation. And we intend we intend to make this a standing program over the course of time. So I'll be inheriting that program from Trish Rifo, who created it during her year as president, and she fully expects me to continue it. And I'm eager to work with her in this bar year and in the coming bar year to find ways that we can address this problem. It can be an intractable problem. I mean, there will always be bad cops out there somewhere, right? We know that, but it doesn't mean that we have to accept it. It means we have to continue to be vigilant to protect the lives of our citizens, all of our citizens, regardless of race, gender, color, national origin, or sexual orientation.
Right. And Reggie, you made a great segue. I think Reggie's seen my list of questions. He knows exactly where he was going with this, right? Even when I switch up the order, he knows where my mind is at. But it's an important point about, finding employment, finding opportunities that exist. And Dennis sort of alluded to this earlier about, as law students and young lawyers, do the best you possibly can, because there's people that want to pay it forward. There's those of us that are and see you in the pipeline that want to be able to do something, with it, and the importance of that. And Dennis, I see you eager because it's perfect time is coming to you. And that the concept I'm talking about now is about a lot of attorneys throughout young lawyers and the like lost employment during the pandemic, or were threatened with not even having the opportunity for employment they thought was coming their way. Offers revoked at certain jobs, places that couldn't hire them. What can attorneys do to make themselves more marketable in an effort to frankly become gainfully employed? Because all of the advocacy work is fantastic, but let's be honest, it doesn't always put food on the table. You have to have some ability to get trained as a lawyer, right? To pay those bills so you can go out and also do that work that you very well may be passionate, about doing. So let's talk about employment opportunity. Dennis, take it away.
Let me just back up for 1 second before I respond to that question.
Sure.
One of the things that we have not spoken about, but I want to make sure it's said. When I was in law school, and the summer that I was a law clerk for attorney Damon J. Keith and his law firm, we had the rebellion in the city of Detroit in 1967. And following that, the business and corporate community put together a civic community or civic entity called New Detroit. And it was headed up by Joe Hudson, whose family owned the J.O. Hudson Company, et cetera. And he one of the things that was very successful for him in the program was that he asked for volunteers to be paired up to work together to go into, be in the city of Detroit and also go into the suburban communities and have the same message. It's important for us to work together. Blacks, whites, our community come together, etc. I was paired up with another law student by the name of Larry Campbell. He was a law student at the University of Detroit Mercy. And he and I became long and fast friends. And then when I graduated from law school and started practicing law, another lawyer by the name of John R. Kersel. John Kersel, he saw me working in the Wolverine Bar, but he saw some other things I was doing. And he said, you need to be involved in the Detroit Bar Association, Young Lawyers. You need to be involved with the Young Lawyers section of the Michigan State Bar, and you need to be involved in the Young Lawyers of the American Bar Association. Both of those guys happened to be white, and they were very influential in my life. And when I got ready to leave the mayor's office, Larry Campbell, who was chairman of Dickinson Wright, stepped aside to allow me to become chairman, be elected chairman, because my role was to be come in and be a rainmaker, among other things. And because the chairmanship now allowed me not only to cause a little rain, but a few hurricanes and tornadoes. And so that was one. And then as it relates to the John Kersel, if I hadn't gone and gotten involved, I would never have been president of the ABA, probably never been president of the state bar, because I'd have been active in the Wolverine Bar and I'd have been satisfied with that. But I saw how those organizations can make a difference. Reggie Turner is going to be a invaluable person at this time as he comes in as president of the American Bar Association. Well, first he comes in as president-elect in August, and then he'll have a planning year, and as president, he's going to be outstanding. Here's a guy who not only is a lawyer, but wanted to give back. You know how the United Way helps people who are in need? Reggie shared that. That was part of what he did. That was part of what he cared about. And so he's doing those kind of things. And all of the panel members are here, and including yourself. You don't even talk about what you do, but I think people would be amazed at what you've done and how you give back to open up doors for others. It's not just us doing something, it's all of us working together to make change. There's going to be some invaluable opportunities for our young lawyers, black, white, to be very successful. That you're going to have opportunities to represent the clients that you want to represent. You're going to have an opportunity to make a difference in people's lives. And not everybody wants to be in a big law firm. A lot of people love and want to in the legal services arena because there's so many people in need, and that's how they can really make an impact. Judge Yule is just awesome in terms of how well he's respected. He didn't share that with you, but I will tell you, he's awesome. I mean, in terms of the respect that where I am, the circles that I run into, Judge Yule, you are just, I mean, you walk on water, you swim, and you don't get wet, brother. And Brother Perkins, what you're doing with young people, what you started out doing and what you're doing now, and what you're doing in our church over there with Father Norman Thomas over at Sacred Heart, it's a big, it's wonderful. It's nice to go in and see and go to mass and see David Perkins there and the people walking up to him. And what do you think about this? What do you think about that? See him there with his family. It makes a difference. There's a lot to be done yet.
So, ladies and gentlemen, if you ever want to see what a mic drop looks like, you just saw it in real life, but Dennis just did for us right there. No, Dennis, thank you for those sentiments. I'm sure I echo the sentiment of the rest of the panel that, again, it's the work of everybody. It's what we all can all do with our own sort of personal platforms and opportunities and to pay it forward and to give back. You know what I mean? You can't give what you don't receive. But we all have been benefited. So we already receiving so much. It's such a duty, I think, to continue to put that back into the earth, and not so you can get it back later, not to do that. You will reap what you sow, but to do it because it's just the right thing to do. Coma's on the screen. I can believe we do have a question from the audience. Prior to jumping that question, Judge Perkins, Reggie, Judge, I want to give you all a quick opportunity if you had any additional quick anecdotes with regard to employment. We'll hear those quickly, or we can jump to Cole. So the floor is yours either way.
Okay, real quick, put the work in, don't be afraid to ask questions, and always try to do your best. And as lawyers, young, old, or somewhere in between, the only thing we have is our word, our integrity, and our reputation. And that's important.
I would just say to the young folks, as I said, I think earlier, half of life is just showing up. As I had mentioned, most of the great opportunities that have come for me in the course of my life have come because I was engaged in some pursuit to help my community in some way or another. And I didn't plan it that way. I didn't get involved in community service or legal issues because I thought I was going to get on corporate boards or get to Charity United Way or any of those things. It's not why you do it, but I can say that so many great opportunities have come to me over the course of my career as a result of just trying to do the right thing. And I think people should just remember that. It comes back.
It does.
If I can just dovetail on that real quickly, one of my favorite movies is It's a Wonderful Life. And it's in some ways it's a spiritual story because it talks like an angel is following a guy who said, well, what if I never lived? And it just, I just think just briefly, if you never put anything out there, you're not gonna get anything back. But if you put a whole lot out there, if you give to your community, give, always be ready to help someone else, it will come back. And during this time, if you, this is the time when a lot of people get rich because they come up with an idea. And this is what lawyers, we're taught to think outside the box. And if you might become up with something with the media, social media, or some other way to market your services, people need it. And if you can get out there first with a great idea, it could be a real breakthrough.
Absolutely. All right, with that, Coleman, I'm gonna kick it to you. I think we've got about 6-7 minutes left. We have time for a question or two from the audience, so we'll do best to keep the answers brief, given how many questions we got, I guess, Cole. So with that, I will kick it over to you, sir, and take us away.
Thanks, Jerome. And I actually got a question from the audience that's directly on topic about how we further the conversation. The question was, what advice do you have for normalizing these conversations within our firms in legal settings, and how do we hold these people accountable?
One of the ways you do that is to have a specific committee or group that comes together to talk about how do we show fairness within our firm, because we are the ones who are expected and demand fairness of everybody else that we represent and the like. And so it is important from within the firm to take a look at who's in the firm, what's your makeup, how many women are in the firm, how many people of color, and if there are no women or very few women, what are you going to do to make a change? Because I'm going to tell you something. These corporations, and Reggie was talking about and others, these corporations are going to be asking the question, we have an interest in doing business with your firm, but the work that we do for our corporation, we need to be able to reach in and to pick whoever it is we think we need to help us win the case or to be in front of different entities, whether it's a judge or a zoning board or whatever case may be. And so we want people that we can pick and choose. And for those law firms who have not done it, and those law firms who are not doing anything about it right now, and if they don't, those law firms will not be around for a long time. Tom Mars was the general counsel of Walmart. He and his other colleagues were asking different law firms that they were using would you please consider hiring women? Would you please consider hiring lawyers of color? Because we want to pick and choose lawyers that will help us do. He removed $60 million of business out of different law firms because they decided not to exercise their discretion to hire women or people of color. It makes a difference. And if you do that by working with the corporations who want that done, those corporations will help your law firm grow. And they will also help those lawyers of color grow financially, and it enhances the firm. Everybody wins when the firm does well. So I would suggest, please take a look at what you might be able to do internally. And if the firm is happy with what they see, fine. But if there's some ways that they think some things ought to be changed, then change them, because it'll make it better.
Anyone else can dive in on this one about normalizing these conversations?
Not to be, one of the key is not to be afraid to have the conversations. If you're not in a firm, but when you meet with your colleagues, friends, don't shy away from the conversation. And you can have it in a real polite, simple way. But time is up for us not to address these issues and run from the conversations and participate in different programs or bring different programs, such as the implicit bias, like the state bar did. And you'd be surprised of what you really learn about yourself and some of those around you. So,
And if you're uncomfortable
engage
doing
and have the conversation.
if you're uncomfortable doing that, there's so much material on having uncomfortable conversations that could help you, whether it's in a firm or a business or the government, whatever the law practice is or wherever the environment is. You can, get some materials that can help you do that.
By the way, you talk about implicit bias, as I believe Reggie Turner would confirm that the implicit bias initiative, as well as the videos that were done for law firms and judges and others, was started by Paulette Brown, who is a former president of the National Bar Association and the first woman of color president of the American Bar Association during her presidency.
She stands on the shoulders of those giants, Dennis Archer and Robert Gray, who broke the color barrier back to back in the American Bar Association. And
the Twin Towers.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Still standing.
All right.
Jerome, as we're approaching the end here, I just want to throw it back to you. Let everyone get their last 15 seconds of advice. And Jerome, I'm actually going to start with you as a young lawyer. What's your 15 seconds of advice to young lawyers?
So, fair to say, make sure I'm answering this one correctly. So like 15 seconds. See, I'm giving myself this advice because I'm still technically legally considered a young lawyer, but I guess if I take liberties on this one to the rest of the gentlemen panel, despite their striking appearance and the fact that we know black don't crack, I guess what we're saying is simply that 15 seconds or less advice you'd give to your younger self, like to your things you wish you had known. Is that fair? Okay. So I'll think back to my first day of practice and once upon a time long ago. The things I said I wish I'd known, and I began giving advice like this in law school, and simply put it was work smarter, not harder, and don't reinvent the wheel. There's people around that have done it before that may or may not even look like you. Rely on those resources and basically cut to the chase, use those tricks of the trade.
I'll go next. Something I was reiterating, something that David Perkins said earlier. Don't be afraid to fail. Be bold. I wish I have been a little bolder. Don't and ask questions, and it's okay to ask for help.
Right. I'll go. Just reach for the stars and don't be afraid about it. Okay. And don't be afraid to take advice.
Yes, Reggie?
Service is the price you pay for the air you breathe.
Agreed.
Dennis?
I am thankful for this opportunity to be with my colleagues, and hopefully we've provided some guidance to the young lawyers that will follow in our footsteps, because it is going to be on you, not us. I'm part of the Over the Hill gang. Our future relies upon you and what you do, how you treat people, how you are as a family person, and how you are as a lawyer, and how you are wanting to be fair and just.
I think that's a perfect way to sum it up, Dennis, that we often take personal accountability and taking account of what we can do in our own lives, our own circles every single day, and not just look left and right, put your Seabiscuit blinders on and just keep running. So with that, as you'll see on the screen you have in front of us, you've got contact information for everyone that had an opportunity to hear from tonight. Again, we didn't get the top secret information. You can find this publicly, so we didn't give you their personal sales. But the same way as Dennis has given his time and me, this them to give their time. Reach out to them. Closed mouth won't be fed. So myself included, more than happy to connect with anyone to talk further these conversations, sharing the insights and connect and meet. So with that, we are a few minutes over. We've taken 3 minutes longer of your day than we anticipated, but we hope and we know it was well worth it. Gentlemen, thank you again for joining us tonight. To again have this conglomerate, this group in the same room at the same time is incredibly rare. So I am fully appreciative. I know the entire State Bar of Michigan is, Young Lawyers section, and all of those involved in putting this together. Shouts to you again, Brother Potts, on leading the effort here. It's been a privilege and an honor of mine. With that, we bid you all adieu. Good night, and thank you so much for joining us. Be blessed, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you so much. God bless.
Very much. Good night, folks.
Good night.